Hello! Start of another reading week. As before, I'm continuing with my reread of Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson on audio. Currently I am on page 301. So I've read this bit, have this bit left. Let's see what kind of progress I can make. And my other main read at the moment is finally The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I've only just started it. I'm on page 16, but so far so good. I'm really enjoying myself. It's already pretty bleak, which is what I was expecting / hoping for, so that's good. And yeah, hopefully I'll finish this relatively quickly. I think it's like 370 pages long, so it's not a super long read, which is good because I can get through it relatively quickly, hopefully, and move on to some other books on my TBR, because we are now in week 3 of the Newts and I have only read 5 books so far, which I know sounds like a lot, but when you've got 12 books to get through, is it really a lot? Not so much. The Cruel Prince is my History of Magic Exceeds Expectations read. Once I've read this one, I will have done all of my mandatory, acceptable and exceeds expectations OWL, so I will then be moving on to read Girls of Paper and Fire, which will be my Ancient Runes Outstanding read. Once I've done that, I will have qualified for my librarian career. Hooray! So this is actually my second time filming this end of the week wrap up, because for some reason the first time I filmed it, it didn't record audio. So I don't know why that happened. Maybe I didn't switch the mic on. Not sure. Anyway, starting off with my reread, this is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, which I am continuing to reread on audiobook. I started off the week on page 301 and I am finishing off the week on page 435. So I've read this portion here and this portion here, and I have this bit left. I haven't really been prioritising that because although it could count for one of my Newts, I'm probably not going to use it for any of my Newts because I don't think I'll finish it this month, so I've been prioritising the books that are going to count towards my Newts. Is this camera wonky? I think that's better. So moving on to my actual Newts, I did indeed finish The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is a fae fantasy story that follows a protagonist named Jude, who is mortal but has a half-fae sister, and when her half-fae sister's father comes to murder her parents, she and her sisters are taken to the land of fairy and raised by her fae half-sister's father who murdered her biological parents. None of that is a spoiler because it all happens in the prologue. And what a way to start a book. Oh boy. The story is very heavily character focused and the plot is very heavily character focused, which I know doesn't make a lot of sense, but really, although there is a plot to this story, the main point of the plot is character development, really. So if you're a plot focused reader, I'm not sure how you'd feel about this book. I mean, it's very, very popular, so you're probably fine, but I think it's definitely catered more towards character focused readers rather than plot focused readers, and that made it perfect for me because I really loved that and I really liked the characters. They're all very flawed. There's not much grey about it. There's lots of bad stuff going on, and I mean the fae as a species in fantasy are tricksters. They can't lie, but they're pretty good at lying anyway, even though they can't technically lie. But our protagonist Jude is human, so she can lie, which makes her a perfect candidate to become a spy. And so that's kind of what this book is about, but like I said, it's definitely more character focused, and there were lots of things going on that made it very, very interesting, and I'm kind of intrigued to see where the series is going to go, because it's one of those great books where I just can't predict what direction we could go in. I enjoyed it. Then I did finish Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ungen, and that means that I've qualified as a librarian. I've done all of my newts to qualify for a librarian, and that's super exciting. I'm still going to go for my cross qualification as a Hogwarts professor, but for now I'm going to talk about this one, which was my outstanding in Ancient Runes. I think this one exceeds expectations in History of Magic. This, first off, is very dark as well, and you need to be aware of trigger warnings for rape and sexual violence. And actually, it wasn't as graphic as I was anticipating. I thought that this was going to be a much more brutally graphic book than it actually turned out to be. So although we do see some scenes of sexual violence and rape, it's not as graphic as I was anticipating, which is good, because I think sometimes gratuitous depictions of those scenes aren't necessary to convey the message that those scenes are trying to convey, and this book achieved that really well. There's throughout the book this undertone of this threat that the Demon King places all the female protagonists in the story under, because they know that at any time he can call on them and rape them. But it's dealt with in a very respectful and delicate way, but without shying away from the issue that is trying to be dealt with. And I thought that the author did really well with that. The sexual violence isn't used as a plot device. It isn't used as a shock factor. It is something that the characters are dealing with, but it isn't the main source of character growth in the book. So it's definitely a part of the story and an important part of the story, but it's not the most important part of the story, and it's not the driving factor of the story at all. Again, this is a very character focused story, and in this one we follow a character named Lay, who is part of the Paper cast. So in this fantastical world there are 3 casts of people. There's Paper, who are just normal humans like us, and then there is Moon cast, which are like full demons, so they are animals in humanoid form. And it took me a little bit of time to kind of understand what that meant in the context of the book, and I did actually look up some fan art, just because I'm not a particularly visual person. I find it quite difficult to read a description on the page and actually visualise it in my head, so looking up the fan art really helped me with that, and there's some amazing fan art as always. And then in the middle of Paper and Mooncast you have Steelcast, which is a hybrid between the two. So it's humans but with some animal features, so they might have, you know, fur or wings or horns or something like that. So Lay is taken from her village home to the palace where the Mooncast Demon King lives, to become one of his paper girls, so basically to become one of his courtesans for him to use for his pleasure as and when he so desires. And that's where the undertone of this dark risk of being abused comes from. But like I said, it's not the primary focus of the book. It's there and it tinges the whole book with this darkness, but it's not the main driving force. The main driving force is our main character. And also there is a female-female romance here, and interestingly this world doesn't consider queer relationships to be a problem. It's just that lesbian relationships don't happen. They're just not talked about, they're not seen. Male-male romance is totally normal and people talk about it and it happens and, you know, whatever, but female-female romance is not. It's just not a thing in this world, and I think that that's a really interesting way of looking at prejudice against sexual orientation. So yeah, this book deals with a lot of heavy themes. I really enjoyed reading it, and I'm interested to see what's going to happen in book 2, particularly as the ending of this one wasn't my favourite. It's not a cliffhanger or anything like that, but yeah, I just kind of wish that it had ended slightly differently, but that's just me and I'm not going to go into any more detail about that. So having finished that one, I then moved on to The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg, and I've literally only just started this. I'm only on page 24, but this is sort of, if you've seen Westworld, it's basically a mashup of Westworld and Disneyland. So The Kingdom is a Disneyland type theme park, but it's very technologically advanced. I don't know if this is meant to be set in the future or on another planet or anything. I'm pretty sure it's sci-fi, because although there are fantastical elements like princesses and dragons, they are technological advances rather than mythical creatures. So I think I'm pretty sure it's sci-fi, and it's also mystery, which I'll come on to in a second. So we follow a character named Anna, who is a fantasist, which means that she's half human, half android, and her role in the kingdom is to just improve the guest experience, I guess. Guests go to the theme park to live out their hero or villain adventure, and the theme park records their entire time throughout the park and can then create a film for them of their hero arc or villain arc or whatever it is that they've decided to do. And Anna, through the course of this story, gets caught up in a murder trial. She's being accused of murdering one of the human workers in the park, I believe. And it doesn't follow a linear chronology, so we're bouncing between post-trial, 2 years before the trial, and during the trial, and I suspect that that will continue throughout the book as things start to piece together and make sense, which I actually really quite like that format in a mystery. I don't read very many mysteries, but when I do, I like that kind of formula. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in this one, and I'm already intrigued, which at 24 pages in is a pretty good sign. So I'm happy with that. It's been a very good reading week, I think. I finished 2 books. I read like 100 and something pages of another one, and I've started a third. I've actually finished at my current job, or my previous job now, and I'm not starting on my new job until next week. So I have a few days off in between that I can use to do some extra reading, which is great. I'm super excited for that. And I've had a really great week. I also went to a meetup on Primrose Hill at the weekend, and I met Emma from Emmmabooks, and I'll insert a clip here of that.
I'm sorry. Oh, no, it's only the hill. This is Emma. You probably know her.
Yes, we've had a lovely day at the Book Turnette meetup in London.
have.
We've had some fun chats, which has been a lot of fun. We've been here for a long time too.
Yeah, like 4 hours, 5 hours.
5, yeah. It's been so much fun though, and I've had so much fun getting to meet you and everyone else. And your eyeshadow is gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
Such a nice little pop of color.
Yeah. And look at the view.
So beautiful. So beautiful. It's all of London.
Yeah.
And yeah, I met some really lovely people. Emma herself was just absolutely so lovely and welcoming to everyone and just put us all at ease. And I met some other lovely people, readers and booktubers and bookstagrammers and book twitterers, and made some lovely new friends, and it was a really, really fun time. But that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks, bye!